Hi, my name is Bernhard Thalhammer, and I'm going to talk about entrepreneurial and token-based finance. Before we get into the program, allow me to quickly introduce myself. I studied international business in Vienna in Japan and was working for several business angels, VCs, and other investors. And I headed the M&A agenda for one of the big media houses in Austria for a couple of years. I then co-founded two businesses and got into fintech, where I was responsible for the issuer relations at the marketplace for traditional and financial products. And in this context, we issued one of the first security token offerings on an independent platform, and that was about 3 years ago. I also did a certificate program on blockchain and fintech at the University of Liechtenstein, and I'm also a lecturer there for this certificate program and also for the master in entrepreneurship and in the startup lab. And then about 2 years ago, I founded my own company. It's 89 Ventures, and we're an entrepreneurial fintech advisory firm, and we focus on the structuring of digital assets. We're also building bridges in a way that we co-found businesses and develop them, and we also offer revenue-based finance. So that's a quick overview of who I am and what we do at our company. Let's get into entrepreneurial finance. What is it, right? You want to do something, or you want to start something. So you have the next big thing in mind in, let's say, crypto, or in AI, or in fintech, or in tech in general. Then you're in the typical, let's say, funding cycle of a startup. So in the beginning, and I really love this term, when you only have the team and the idea and you're basically pre-everything, right? You don't have anything, you have an idea, and maybe you have a partner or more partners, and you start to maybe discuss a really exciting idea over a beer or two in a pub or something, and then the next day you still think about it, and the next day you still think about it, and it's really gotten to you. So you think you have to do something. And that's where the, let's say, entrepreneurial finance cycle or the funding cycle basically then kicks in. Because of course you need maybe a website, or you need a proof of concept, or you need some technology, or you need to buy things. So you need, of course, a budget. And here in this typical funding cycle, we're looking at about, let's say, 50 to 100K, right? That's what you usually need when you start something. And usually that's coming from the founders, or maybe from friends and family, or sometimes the 3F, the friends, family, and maybe also the fools sometimes. And that's basically where things start to kick in. So I would say this is really the first segment of the entrepreneurial funding cycle, where the money, mostly equity, it's coming from yourself or your environment. So and after that, and that's where the green line is, and I think after that anything basically can be done token-based. So usually then, the angels come in and they give you a couple of 100,000, then maybe late seed, they call it here. It's maybe coming from VCs or, other angels. Then there are various other methods of funding, either equity-based or debt-based. But at any time, basically, you can do something in a dimension where you talk about a token-based finance. And we're going to talk about the various possibilities just in a second. So basically, what is entrepreneurial finance? It's about securing the right amount of capital at the right time from the right sources, and to grow your business or to start your business the right way. And it also includes a very, let's say, robust hypothesis about what is right. There is never one single answer, it's always more answers. So the discussion about what has to happen in the future with the company, it's a very, very important one. And it's very important to have a similar vision of what has to happen with your founding team. So I once co-founded a business where the founder and me, we had different visions of what has to happen in the future. So one of us wanted to grow the business to a very large extent, and the other one wanted basically just to have an income for himself. And those are very the opposite goals. And the earlier you have a very, let's say, honest and transparent discussion about these topics, the better it is. So what I learned from this startup I did, it's to have this discussion very early on, and maybe at that point I had it too late. But that's what I'm really trying to refer here. There is no right way, no single right way to do things. There are always more ways to do it. But it's important that the founding team really has a similar vision of what has to happen. And of course, entrepreneurial finance, we would say it's hands-on. So sometimes we're really in co-founding positions then when it comes to venture development. And it definitely involves a very deep understanding of business. So when sometimes people say finance is really boring, I disagree. Because I think it's probably the most important thing, because when you don't have the budget to fulfill your mission and to fulfill your goal, what can you do anyway? So probably not so much. Before we discuss token-based finance further, one disclaimer, and it's that one that in fundraising anything goes. Sometimes people come to me and ask me, is it important to have a clear business plan in order to get funding for my project? And definitely my answer would be yes. And then they say, is it important to have somewhat of, let's say, transparent valuation of your company? And then the answer would be definitely yes, that's very important. But then on the other hand, there are very, let's say, unusual stories about fundraising, and I guess most of them or some of them are true. So what I'm trying to say, if you're Elon Musk's nephew and at the snip of the finger you get 5 million in seed funding for your next project, it's good for you. You probably don't need to listen to what I have to say here. But I guess for most of us other, let's say, more normal people, there are probably some guidelines about how fundraising has to happen in a way. And basically that's what I'm talking about, and that's what this disclaimer is for. So let's have a look at token-based finance. We all know that the token, it's a digital container, and I have used this slide so many times, but I always love it because it really refers to a very, I think, a core element of the whole token-based finance discussion and the whole token discussion in general. It's a digital container and you can put in whatever you want. I can tokenize this thing here and put it into a token. If it makes sense, probably not, but I can do it. And the same goes for token-based finance. It's very important to have a look at what is in there. Is it equity or is it debt or is it a mixture of it? And that's really the very, very important discussion and the very important point here. So I'm not gonna go into details, but the regulators, sometimes it's good to listen to them. They differentiate 3 types of token. One is the payment token, like Bitcoin, and then the other 2 are very interesting for funding purposes. We're gonna discuss that. One is the utility token, which is not so much regulated, and the other one, it's the security token, which is very much regulated because it's a financial product. And if you issue a financial product, in token form or in any other form, you're in the financial regulation space, and then you have to really focus on these topics. We discussed the security tokens, the utility tokens, and of course, very interesting, the DeFi tokens, especially in the context of venture funding. So here we are really talking about, let's say, the launch pads. They exist from each and every exchange. There are a couple of other projects where you can invest in venture capital via a DeFi token. And that's basically the space we look at here when it comes to token-based finance. When we look at the solution space of token-based, or for that matter, any other kind of finance, there are 3 pillars and they interact with each other. So those are the very important thing, to have a clear legal framework. Is it a security or is it not a security? And if it is a security, then what kind of security is it? Is it maybe under the German regulation, or is it under the Swiss regulation? You have to follow different rules for issuing this token. And then that brings me to my next cornerstone here, the transaction process. Because when you know that you have one type of token you want to issue in a certain country under a certain jurisdiction, then based on these, let's say, laws, there has to be a transaction process in place that fulfills these legal requirements. And that brings me to my last cornerstone, the marketing aspect. And I think that's one of the most important aspects when it comes to token-based finance. The question is, who is going to buy your token? Do you have the community? That's very good. Or you don't have it, then you have to think about how to get it. And that's really, let's say, the three cornerstones here that are very important. They interact with each other, and if you change, let's say, one cornerstone because you decide that you don't want to issue your token in Switzerland, but you want to maybe issue it in Germany, then basically the two other things will change as well, because probably the transaction process has to be changed based on the different legal requirements. And then also the marketing aspect has to change as well, because depending on where you want to market your token, different, let's say, laws are in place that you have to follow. So we talked about the security versus utility issue a little bit. Yeah, it seems that it's very clear what is a security and what is not a security, but it's not. And that's what we are seeing with all these recent examples. For example, on July 13, Ripple was declared that it's not a security, and based on that, the token price really took off. So they discussed, I think, for years if the Ripple it's a security or it's not, and in the end it came out, or that it's not, and that's really not a very trivial issue at times. The same with Bittrex. So they said, okay, it's a security, and now it's not, but then again the SEC said it is a security. So these discussions sometimes are not very, very clear. The same with BUSD, which was a stablecoin offered by Paxos in combination with Binance. And just recently they said, okay, it's a security, and in the end they had to stop the support BUSD here in 2024. And very interesting, now Paxos is offering a new stablecoin, which is supposedly not going to be a security, in combination or in collaboration with PayPal. So probably that's what it needs in order to get not a security, so to say. So yeah, I think to maybe come to some kind of a conclusion, when we look at the structuring process of a token offering or maybe any other offering as well, it's important to really think about, and I think this first phase, it's really the most important one. It's really important to get the cornerstones of the transaction, right? Because we need, we said we need the legal framework, we need the transaction process, and we need the marketing aspect. And that's really the goal of the conception phase that we need to do at the beginning. So we really have to think about who is going to buy the token, under which legal framework, and under which, let's say, transaction process. Then we have to basically say, okay, how much is this whole thing going to cost me, and how long is it going to take? And those are the three very important things when it comes to the concept development of a token offering. The other phases here, phase 2, 3, and 4, it's basically, the detailing of the first phase. But again, the first phase, it's the most important one because you have to get the cornerstones right. Then based on that, you can do everything else, so to say. So, yes, and then we heard now many things about, token-based finance or other methods of financing. And now, of course, the important question is always, okay, everything is nice. You are telling me now what is possible, but I really want to know what does my token-based finance project make successful? So how am I going to be successful? How can I get the right amount of funding? And that's where we want to look at the success dimensions. And when you talk to people, you get many different opinions, right? So when you want to go to the moon, everything is important, right? So, and if you talk to maybe a person who is in communication, this person is going to say, well, the communication aspect of a token offering, it's the most important one. When you talk to a lawyer, the lawyer is of course going to say, well, the legal framework, that's really the most important thing. And when you talk about someone who is really passionate about, let's say, specific type of blockchain, this person is going to say, okay, you need this kind of blockchain in order to be successful. That's what I really want to basically symbolize here with these loudspeakers. There are so many different aspects, and depending on who you talk to, this person is going to say, of course, my aspect, it's the most important one. And this is not, for us, it's not very helpful, right? Because when we talk to 5 different people, we're going to get 10 different opinions about what is the most important thing here. So what I did then, I had a look at about 40 to 50 token offerings. I'm not going to show you all the data because it's a little bit boring, but what I tried to do is to get basically an essence of what makes token offerings for financing successful or not. And so basically based on the data and on the research I did, those are the success dimensions that I think are the most important ones. So the first one is the capital requirements. If you need, let's say, $200 million for a really big project, probably token-based finance, it's not the way to go. Of course, sometimes there are examples where you can raise that kind of money for a project, but most of the times lower capital requirements will lead to a higher success in the token offering. So if you need maybe 5 to 10 million, maybe that's a good amount for token-based finance. Again, the next dimension would be the token economics. There we see that if you only offer, let's say, a fixed interest rate or something, let's say, which is not very entrepreneurial or, let's say, equity-like return profile, then probably people will not be so interested. So it's very important to also have, let's say, other incentives or something like an equity-like return profile. So you really kind of make the token holders somewhat of your, let's say, shareholders. So they are really part of the success of the company. Then the next dimension might seem a little bit, let's say, unusual, but what we've seen is that the farther away a project is, if it's a real project, then the more difficult I think it gets to get a connection with the project, and the less likely the success will be of a token offering. So I had a look at one token offering where you could buy a token to finance a cattle farm in Bolivia, right? And then, of course, the first question, people would ask is, but how do I know that some cows are, running around in Bolivia? I really can't tell you. And that's really, I think, part of the issue here. If you don't have a connection to the project and it's on the other half of the world, so to say, I think it's very unlikely that this adds to the success of the token offering. And then the last 2 aspects, I think, are some of the most important ones. As I mentioned it before, you really have to have a very clear vision about your product and the use case, and also about your community. And the bigger your community is, I think the more likely the success of your token offering will be. So yes, that's that. I think I'm through most of the slides now. And maybe some food for thought before we have some real food for lunch, hopefully very soon. So what I just want to discuss now, or maybe as a basis for the Q&A session now. So basically there are many fish in the sea, and token-based finance, it's only one of them. So I think it's always important to have a look at the options, and sometimes maybe a combination of different financing options, it's really the way to go. The second thing, I just mentioned it, it's how big is your community? And that's not the community of anyone else or something else, but how big is your community? And are they willing to basically get on board and support you with your financing? And if you don't have a community or your community is small enough, you really have to think about your customer acquisition costs. Because if they are really, really high, then probably other methods of financing do make more sense. And then maybe the last point is if you already have revenue, then maybe it's a good idea to try out revenue-based financing. So basically it's a debt-based instrument where the investor basically participates on every time you kind of sell one piece of your product. And that can be very interesting, let's say, for all kinds of digital products and other things. Or maybe it's good to get an equity-based investment as well, because sometimes business angels or even VCs, they really add value other than the money, because they have the network and they have the knowledge and they have everything. So maybe that's sometimes also a good option. So I think that concludes the official part of my little presentation here. And I'm very happy to discuss the various aspects, and I'm happy to get your questions. Thank you so much. Thank you.